Millionaire sees his black childhood girlfriend selling hot dogs on the street, and he can't believe it. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. Mateo Pedraza stepped out of his shiny silver car. He fixed his fancy suit as the morning sun lit up the streets of Chicago. Mateo was 45 years old, and he had everything. Lots of money, a big apartment high up in the city, and a huge company that made him even richer. But something inside him felt empty, like something was missing, and it had been like that for the last 20 years. Mr. Pedraza, your meeting with the board starts in 10 minutes, his assistant's voice said through his earpiece. I'll be there soon, Mateo answered. But first, he needed his morning coffee. Not just any coffee, the expensive one from the fancy shop around the corner that cost $8 for a cup. But that morning, something different happened. As he walked, he smelled something delicious, grilled hot dogs with onions. It wasn't the kind of breakfast he usually ate, but it reminded him of something. Someone. Then he saw her. Standing behind a small hot dog cart wearing a clean but old apron was Rosa Williams. Her hair had a few gray strands now, and she had lines on her face from the years that had passed. But Mateo knew those eyes. He had stared into them so many times when they were young, lying under the stars in their old neighborhood. Rosa was busy serving a customer, her hands moving fast as she made the hot dog. She didn't see Mateo yet, and his heart started beating really fast, just like when he was 17. Do you want mustard on that, honey? Rosa asked her customer with a warm smile. It was the same smile that had once been his whole world, 25 years ago. Back then, Rosa was everything to him. They grew up in the same small neighborhood. She was the daughter of the town's preacher, and he was the boy who dreamed of becoming rich and successful. They were in love, the kind of love that made you believe anything was possible. But then Mateo got a big scholarship to Harvard. His parents told him to focus on his future. Rosa's father said she needed someone who would stay, not someone who would leave to chase big dreams. Mateo? Rosa's voice brought him back to the present. She had finally noticed him. Her hot dog tongues hung in the air, frozen. Rosa, he said, his throat dry. I didn't expect. A car honked nearby, and Mateo realized he was standing in the middle of the sidewalk, blocking people. His phone buzzed. It was probably his assistant, wondering where he was. You look good, Rosa said, finding her voice again. She had always been the strong one. Looks like you made it. Her words hit him like a punch. Yes, he had made it. He had the money, the power, the success, everything he dreamed of. Everything except her. How have you been? It wasn't enough. Oh, life happens, Rosa said with a small shrug, motioning to her hot dog cart. Been running this business for 15 years. Sent my kids to school with it. Kids. The word echoed in Mateo's head. Of course, she had a life after him, a husband, children, a whole world he knew nothing about. Mr. Pedraza, the board is waiting, his assistant's voice interrupted again. I have to go, Mateo said, hating every word. I'm here every day, Rosa said simply, turning back to her work. Same corner, same hot dogs. Mateo walked away, but his feet felt heavy. He forgot about his fancy coffee. All he could think about was the past, promises made under the stars, dreams shared on front porches, and a love he thought he had to leave behind. That night, standing alone in his big, quiet apartment, Mateo looked out at the city lights. He had everything he had ever wanted, but seeing Rosa had shown him exactly what he had lost. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant about meetings and business deals, but all he could think about was whether Rosa still liked her hot dogs with extra mustard and no ketchup, just like before. The next morning, for the first time in years, Mateo canceled a meeting. He was late for work. His secretary, Linda, almost fell out of her chair when she saw him walk in with a hot dog in his hand. Is everything okay, Mr. Pedraza? Linda asked, her eyes wide. Everything's fine, Mateo said, but in his mind he was still at that street corner. Rosa had remembered exactly how he liked his hot dog. She hadn't said much while making it, but her hands had trembled slightly. Back in his office, Matteo did something he hadn't done in years. He opened Facebook and searched for Rosa Williams. Her profile was simple, with just a few pictures. He saw two young women in graduation gowns, both smiling like Rosa, her daughters. In one picture, Rosa stood between them wearing the same apron he saw yesterday. There was no husband in any of the recent pictures. "Mr. Pedraza, Mr. Phillips is here for your 10. Linda's voice came through the intercom. Matteo straightened his tie and closed the Facebook tab. He had work to do, but at lunchtime, his feet carried him back to Rosa's cart. "Back so soon?" Rosa asked, raising an eyebrow. "2 days in a row? Careful, or people might think you actually like hot dogs." "Maybe I do," Matteo said, watching her work. "Daddy, can I have a hot dog?" A little boy's voice interrupted. Matteo turned to see a woman in a business suit trying to hold back an excited child. "Sorry, honey, not today." "We have to go to your doctor's appointment," the woman said. The boy looked sad. Before Matteo could think, he reached for his wallet. "Let me buy him one. I know what it's like to want something and not have it." Rosa looked at him, and he knew she understood what he really meant. The boy's face lit up as he took his hot dog. "You always had a good heart, Matteo," Rosa said softly. "I don't know about that," Matteo said, thinking about how he left her. "I made some selfish choices." Rosa wiped her hands on her apron. "We were kids, Matteo. You had big dreams." "And you didn't?" Matteo asked. Rosa was quiet for a moment. "My dreams were different, simpler, but I reached them. My girls both finished college. Isabella is a teacher, and Valentina is in medical school." Her voice was full of pride. Matteo felt happy for her, but also regretful. He should have been there. Could have been there. "Rosa, would you have dinner with me?" The words came out before he could stop them. "Just to catch up." Rosa looked at him, studying his face. "That's a lot of years to catch up on." "Please," Matteo said. "Just dinner at Antonio's if it's still there." A small smile appeared on her lips. "It's still there. Some things don't change." "Is that a yes?" Rosa sighed, but he saw the smile growing. "Friday at 7. Don't be late." Matteo couldn't stop smiling as he left. His phone buzzed with a message from Valeria, the woman he had been dating. She wanted dinner at a fancy restaurant. Matteo stared at the message. Then he replied that he had other plans. That night, Matteo drove past Rosa's old neighborhood. The houses looked older, the streets a little rougher, but the church where her father used to preach was still there. The church had a tall, white tower that pointed up to the sky, like a finger showing all the dreams they once had. Matteo wondered if Rosa still lived nearby. Did she still sing in the choir on Sundays? Did she ever tell her daughters about the boy who used to climb up to her window just to kiss her goodnight? Friday felt so far away, but then it came faster than Matteo expected. He spent a whole hour picking his clothes. He finally chose a nice suit, but without a tie. He didn't want Rosa to see him as the rich businessman he had become. He just wanted her to see the Matteo she used to know. But life had other plans. Just as he was about to leave his office, his phone rang. It was Carlos Paredes, his most important client. "Matteo, we have a big problem," Carlos said, sounding serious. "The deal we've been working on, someone is trying to stop it. We have an emergency meeting. You have to come now." Matteo looked at the clock. It was 6:30. If he left right away, he could still meet Rosa at the restaurant Antonio's by 7. "Jeff, I have something really important tonight," Matteo said. "More important than $50 million?" Carlos asked. "Matteo, I need you. You're the only one who can fix this." 25 years ago, Matteo had to choose between his dreams and Rosa. Now, here he was again, making the same choice. He picked up his phone to call Antonio's, hoping to reach Rosa, but he didn't have her number. She was probably already on her way, maybe feeling nervous just like him. "Give me 1 hour," Matteo told Carlos. "I'll stop by Antonio's first to explain, then I'll come to the meeting." But Chicago traffic had other ideas. There was a big car crash on Lakeshore Drive, and the road was jammed. Matteo sat in his fancy Bentley, watching the minutes pass on his expensive watch. At 7, Rosa was sitting at a small table in Antonio's, wearing a simple blue dress she had bought just for tonight. Her daughter Valentina had even helped her with her makeup. Every time the door opened, her heart jumped a little. By 7:30, she was still waiting. The waiter came to her table again. "Would you like to order now, ma'am?" he asked. Rosa gave him a small smile. "Just some more water, please." She played with her napkin, twisting it in her hands, just like she used to do when she was nervous in high school. By 8, the other couples who had come after her were already leaving. The waiters started giving her pitying looks. She felt embarrassed. Meanwhile, Matteo was stuck in the meeting, staring at his phone as it lit up with messages from Valeria, his girlfriend. She had somehow found out that he was having dinner with some hot dog vendor and was not happy. "Matteo, are you paying attention?" Carlos's voice snapped him back to reality. "This is important," Carlos said. Important. Everything in Matteo's life for the last 25 years had been about important things. Meetings, deals, business. But right now, all he could think about was Rosa, sitting alone at Antonio's, probably thinking that history was repeating itself. At 9:15, Rosa finally stood up. She had been stood up before, but not in a long time, and never like this. As she walked out of Antonio's, she wondered why she had even said yes. People like Matteo Pedraza didn't have dinner with people like her. She was halfway to the bus stop when she heard someone calling her name. "Rosa, wait!" Matteo was running toward her, his fancy suit all wrinkled, his face red. He looked nothing like the rich businessman she had seen earlier that week. "I can explain," he started. Rosa held up her hand. "No need," she said quietly. "Some things never change, do they, Matteo?" "Rosa, please. There was an emergency meeting. $50 million was on the line. I tried to come sooner. I got stuck in traffic." "There's always something bigger, isn't there?" Rosa's voice was tired. "Always something more important." "You're important," Matteo said, taking a step closer. "Am I?" Rosa looked at him closely. 25 years ago, you chose your future over us, and tonight you made the same choice again." "That's not fair," Matteo protested. "I'm here now." "Yes," Rosa said, 3 hours late. She shook her head. "You know what I was doing 3 hours ago? Sitting in that restaurant watching happy couples making excuses to the waiter, feeling like a 17-year-old girl all over again. The one who wasn't good enough for your big plans." Matteo felt like she had slapped him. "That's not how it was. Wasn't it?" Rosa started walking away. "Go back to your meeting, Matteo. Go back to your perfect life, your perfect suits, and your perfect girlfriend." "How do you know about Valeria?" Rosa smiled sadly. "The women at my hot dog love to gossip. They talk about Chicago's most eligible bachelor, his parties, his fancy life." "Rosa, please, give me another chance." She turned back to him one last time. "You know what's funny? For years, I thought you left because you had bigger dreams. But now I see that maybe I was the lucky one, because I may just be a hot dog vendor, Matteo, but at least I know what's really important in life." Then she walked away, leaving Matteo standing there, just like he had left her 25 years ago. The next morning, Rosa's hot dog cart wasn't on its usual corner. Matteo stood there with his coffee, feeling guilty. "Looking for Rosa?" asked Tom, the newspaper seller. "She called in sick, first time in 15 years. Back in his office, Matteo couldn't focus. The big deal had gone through, and Carlos was happy, but Matteo didn't care. He kept seeing Rosa's face from last night. "Mr. Pedraza," his assistant said, peeking in. "Miss Valeria is here to see you." Before he could say anything, Valeria walked in. She was perfect, her red hair, her expensive perfume, her flawless smile. "Darling, we need to talk," Valeria said, sitting on his desk. "I understand you're having a midlife crisis, but really, a hot dog vendor?" Matteo felt something snap inside him. "Her name is Rosa." "Whatever," Valeria said. "The point is, you have a reputation." What will people think? I don't care, Matteo said, standing up. Valeria laughed. Of course you do. You spent 25 years building this life. Matteo looked at the expensive art, the city view. Then he thought about Rosa's smile, about how she knew exactly how he liked his hot dogs, about how proud she was of sending her daughters to college. You're right about one thing, Valeria, he said. I've spent 25 years building this life, and you know what? I'm not happy. Matteo, you're not thinking clearly, Valeria said. Let's take a trip, maybe to France. But Matteo wasn't listening anymore. He looked at the magazine cover on his wall. It had his face on it, smiling. But now all he saw was how tired his eyes looked. I have to go, he said, grabbing his jacket. Go where? We're not done talking. Yes, we are, Matteo said. We're done with everything. He left, got into his car, and after a few calls, he found Rosa's address. When he got there, he saw a young woman who looked just like Rosa at 18. One of her daughters, maybe. She noticed his car and frowned before going inside. Then Rosa came out. She wore jeans and a t-shirt, her hair in a ponytail, and she was more beautiful than Valeria had ever been. She walked up to his car. Are you just going to sit there all day? I wasn't sure you'd want to see me, Matteo admitted. I don't, Rosa said, but her voice had something that gave him hope. But my daughter Valentina thinks you're either a stalker or a lost puppy. Either way, we should deal with it. I'm sorry, Rosa, Matteo said. I'm sorry about last night. I'm sorry about 25 years ago. I'm sorry about everything. Rosa crossed her arms. You said that last night. I know, Matteo said, but I need to say it again, and I need to say something else too. Matteo stepped out of his big fancy car. He didn't care that his shiny shoes got dusty on the dirt road. He took a deep breath and looked at Rosa. I need to tell you something, Matteo said. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I have thought about you every single day for 25 years. Seeing you again makes me realize how empty my life has been without you. Rosa opened her mouth to say something, but Matteo held up his hand. Please, let me finish. I just broke up with Valeria. I walked out of my office today in the middle of work. I don't care about my fancy job or what people will think. I care about you. I care that you remember how I like my hot dogs. I care that you worked so hard to put your daughters through college. I care that you still have the same beautiful smile that made my heart stop when we were 17. A neighbor walking her dog slowed down to watch them, but Matteo didn't care. I know I don't deserve another chance, he said. I know I hurt you twice, but I'm here, asking for one more chance. Because 25 years ago, I made the wrong choice. I chose money and a big life, but it only gave me an empty apartment and fake friends. I should have chosen you. Rosa crossed her arms. You can't just walk back into my life and expect everything to be okay. I know, Matteo said. I know it won't be easy. I know we've both changed, but some things haven't changed, Rosa. The way I feel about you hasn't changed. Inside the house, Rosa's daughter Valentina watched from the window. She saw the man in the fancy suit talking to her mom. She had never seen him before, but she knew who he was from business magazines. Who's that man talking to Mom? Isabella, her older sister, asked. I don't know, Valentina said, but he was sitting in his car for a long time before coming out. Outside, Rosa felt her heart soften. Matteo looked different from the man she saw in newspapers. For a moment, he looked like the boy she used to love, the one who brought her wildflowers and wrote her poems. You can't fix everything with pretty words, Matteo, she said. Then let me fix it with actions, Matteo replied. Give me a chance to show you I've changed. Before Rosa could answer, her phone rang. It was her work supplier. There was a problem with the delivery for tomorrow. I have to take this, she said. Matteo watched as she handled the call. She was different now, stronger, more confident. He had a lot to learn about who she had become. Mom, Grandpa's on the phone, Valentina called from the porch. He wants to know if you're coming to Sunday dinner. Rosa's father. Matteo felt nervous, Padre Ignacio had never liked him. He thought Mateo only cared about leaving their old neighborhood, and he was right. Tell him I'll call him back, Rosa said. She turned back to Mateo. I should go inside. Have dinner with me, Mateo said quickly. Not at a fancy restaurant, here in your home. Let me cook for you and your daughters. Rosa raised an eyebrow. You cook? No. Mateo laughed. But I can learn. Or I can bring takeout from that Chinese place you used to love. Is it still there? Golden Dragon? Rosa smiled. Yes, it's still there, and they still have the spring rolls you used to say were better than fancy restaurants. Tomorrow night? Mateo asked hopefully. I promise I won't be late this time. Rosa looked at her daughters peeking through the window. My girls should be there. I want to meet them, Mateo said. I want to know everything about your life, everything I missed. Just then, Mateo's phone rang. Rosa tensed, expecting him to answer it. Instead, he turned it off and put it back in his pocket. See? I'm learning. Rosa felt warmth in her heart. Tomorrow at 6, she said finally. Don't forget the extra sweet and sour sauce. Mateo grinned. I'll be here, and I'll bring extra everything. As he drove away, Rosa stood in the driveway, thinking King Wen. Her daughters rushed outside as soon as his car disappeared. Mom, was that really Mateo Pedraza? Valentina asked, eyes wide. The Mateo Pedraza? How do you know him? Isabella added. Why was he here? Rosa looked at her daughters. They had grown up without a father, but they had never lacked love. They deserved to know the truth. Let's go inside, she said. I need to tell you girls a story. Over cups of coffee, Rosa told them everything about young love, big dreams, and choices. About how life doesn't always go as planned. So he's the one? Isabella asked softly. The one in that old photo you keep in your bedside table? Rosa nodded. She had only kept one picture of Mateo, a faded photo from their high school prom. Are you going to give him another chance? Valentina asked. She was studying to be a doctor and always looked for the right answer. I don't know, Rosa said. He hurt me twice. But you still love him, Isabella said. Rosa looked at her daughters. When had they gotten so wise? Sometimes love isn't enough, she said, and sometimes it's everything. We just want you to be happy, Mom, Valentina said. You've worked so hard all these years. You deserve happiness. I am happy, Rosa said. I have you girls. I have my business. But you never let anyone get close, Isabella pointed out. Whenever someone liked you, you always found a reason not to date them. Rosa hadn't realized they had noticed that. Maybe it was because no one else ever measured up to Mateo. The next day, Valeria told everyone in Chicago that Mateo had lost his mind. She told people he left his job in the middle of the day for a hot dog lady. He's having a crisis, Valeria said to her rich friends. Throwing away everything for someone like her, it's tragic. But Mateo didn't care about gossip. He spent the morning in his fancy kitchen watching YouTube videos on how to cook spring rolls. After 3 failed tries, he gave up and ordered food from Golden Dragon instead. Meanwhile, at her hot dog cart, Rosa felt nervous. Her customers noticed. Everything okay, Rosa? Valeria, a construction worker, asked. Just thinking about tonight, she admitted. Hot date? Valeria teased. Rosa blushed. Not exactly. At 5, Rosa closed her cart early for the first time in years. She wanted to get ready. Her daughters helped her. The blue sweater, Isabella said. It brings out your eyes. It's just dinner, Rosa protested, but she wore it anyway. At exactly 5:55, there was a knock at the door. Mateo stood there, holding bags of food, wearing jeans and a simple shirt instead of a suit. You look beautiful, he said. Come in, Rosa said, feeling butterflies in her stomach. Her daughters came in, trying not to stare. You're the boy from the prom photo, Valentina said. Mateo smiled. Yes, I am, though I was a fool back then, still am sometimes. They sat at the table eating together like a family. Mom said you used to write her poetry, Isabella said. Mateo almost choked on his spring roll. She told you that? She told us everything, Valentina said, about how you were her first love. How you left for Harvard and met again at her hot dog cart. Rosa warned her daughters, but Matteo held up his hand. No, it's okay, he said. They should know. They should know I made the biggest mistake of my life when I left your mother. I thought success meant making lots of money and having power. But looking at you two, seeing what your mother has done all on her own, I know now that's real success. The girls looked at each other. This wasn't what they expected from a rich businessman. Why did you really come back? Valentina asked. She wanted to understand more. Matteo put down his chopsticks and looked at Rosa. Because for 25 years I have only lived half a life. I had money, but nothing that really mattered. Seeing your mother again was like waking up from a long dream. Rosa felt tears in her eyes. Matteo, let me finish, he said softly. When I saw you at that hot dog cart, I realized something. All these years, I was chasing something I already had, but threw away. Real love. The kind that remembers how you like your hot dogs even after 25 years. The kind that makes you a better person just by being near it. Isabella wiped a tear from her eye. Valentina pretended to focus on her fried rice. I'm not asking for everything to go back to the way it was, Matteo said. I know too much time has passed, but I want a chance to be part of your life again, all of your lives. Rosa looked at her daughters, then back at Matteo. It won't be easy, she said. I'm not the young man who thought money was everything, Matteo replied. And you're not the same girl I left behind. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we needed time to grow up and understand what we had. Just then, Matteo's phone buzzed. Everyone tensed, but he didn't even look at it. That's probably Valeria, he said calmly. She's been telling everyone I'm having a breakdown. Apparently, choosing love over money means I must be crazy. Are you? Rosa asked. Matteo reached across the table and took her hand. If caring about you more than my reputation makes me crazy, then yes, I'm completely insane. Valentina and Isabella exchanged looks, hiding their smiles. Mom, Isabella said softly, remember what you always told us? That sometimes God gives you a second chance because he thinks you're ready for it. Rosa looked at her daughter, then at Matteo's hand holding hers. Maybe they had needed all this time apart. Maybe they had to become different people to find their way back to each other. The next morning, Rosa's cart was back in its usual spot. But this time, Matteo was there too, wearing jeans and a casual shirt, helping her set up. You don't have to do this, Rosa said, watching him struggle with the umbrella. I want to, Matteo replied, finally getting it right. I want to know everything about your life. Their customers were surprised to see the famous businessman serving hot dogs. Some recognized him from newspapers, but he served them with a smile, even though he kept mixing up the mustard and relish. You're terrible at this, Rosa laughed as he gave a customer sauerkraut instead of onions. I'll learn, Matteo promised, and the way he looked at her made her heart skip a beat. But not everyone was happy about this. By lunchtime, reporters showed up. Mr. Pedraza, is it true you're having a breakdown? Have you really given up your company? What does your family think about your relationship with the street vendor? Matteo stepped in front of Rosa to protect her, but she moved beside him. I can handle myself, she whispered. Then she turned to the reporters. Yes, I sell hot dogs. I put 2 daughters through college doing it. What else would you like to know? The reporters were surprised by her confidence. One of them, a young woman, asked, Miss Williams, how does it feel to have one of Chicago's richest men working at your hot dog cart? Rosa smiled. Honestly, he's not very good at it, but he's trying, and that means more than all his money ever could. The story was in all the newspapers the next day, but instead of a scandal, it became a love story. People loved the idea of a rich man and a hot dog vendor finding their way back to each other after 25 years. Not everyone was happy, though. That afternoon, a black car pulled up. An older man stepped out. It was Matteo's father, Fernando Pedraza. So this is where my son has been wasting his time, he said. Dad, Matteo said, his voice tense. What are you doing here? Trying to stop you from ruining everything we built, Fernando said. Do you know what this is doing to our company's reputation? Our family name? Rosa tried to step away, but Mateo held her hand. I'm not going anywhere, he said firmly. Not this time. You have responsibilities. The company needs you. The company will be fine. I'm still CEO. I still make all the important decisions. I'm just choosing to spend my free time differently, with her. Fernando looked at Rosa like she didn't belong. She's a hot dog vendor. She's the woman I love, Mateo said. The one I should have chosen 25 years ago. We wanted what was best for you, Fernando said. No, you wanted what was best for the company. Well, I've spent 25 years being who you wanted me to be. Now I'm choosing to be who I want to be. A small crowd had gathered, watching. You're making a mistake, Fernando said. No, my mistake was listening to you back then. I won't make that mistake again. Fernando was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at Rosa and asked, Do you really love her? More than anything. Fernando straightened his tie. Your mother will want to meet her. Sunday dinner. Don't be late. Then he got in his car and left. Sunday dinner with your parents? Rosa asked. That's a big step. Mateo smiled. Scared? Terrified, she admitted. But you faced reporters for me. I can face your mother for you. Just be yourself, Mateo said. That's who I fell in love with, both times. Sunday came fast. Rosa stood in front of her mirror, trying to pick an outfit. The green dress, Valentina said. It makes you look like a queen. I don't want to look like a queen, just good enough. Mom, you've never been just good enough. You're amazing, Isabella said. The doorbell rang. Mateo stood there in a suit holding flowers, wildflowers, just like he used to. You look beautiful, he said. The dress is perfect. Your mother is going to hate it, Rosa worried. She's going to hate everything at first, but she'll come around. The drive to the Pedraza mansion was quiet. Rosa watched the houses get bigger and fancier. You grew up here? No, Mateo smiled. My parents moved here after I went to Harvard. A butler opened the door. A tall, elegant woman walked down the stairs. Mateo, darling, she said. It was Catalina Pedraza, exactly as Rosa imagined. Perfect silver hair, fancy clothes, and a pearl necklace that probably cost more than her house. Mateo's mother, Adela, kissed her son on the cheek. A woman named Rosa stood in front of her. Adela looked at her from head to toe, noticing her new dress and her old purse. Nice to meet you, Adela said. Just then, Fernando Pedraza, Mateo's father, came out of his study. He didn't look as angry as he had been when he saw Rosa before. He gave her a small nod. Welcome to our home. The butler led them to a big dining room. It was so big that Rosa thought it could fit her whole house inside. The table was covered with fancy plates and glasses. Everything looked so expensive that she was afraid to touch anything. As the first course of food was served, Adela spoke. So, Rosa, Mateo tells us you have your own business. Rosa sat up straight. Yes, I do. I've been running it for 15 years. Adela raised an eyebrow. A hot dog cart? She said it like selling hot dogs was something bad. How interesting. Very interesting, Mateo quickly added. Rosa worked hard. She put both of her daughters through college with that business. Isabella is a teacher now, and Valentina is in medical school. Adela's eyes widened. Medical school? Really? Yes, Rosa said proudly. Valentina is the best in her class at Northwestern. Fernando looked up from his soup. Northwestern is a great school. It is, Rosa agreed. She worked very hard to get in. Both of my girls did. We didn't have a lot of money, but that never stopped them. Adela's voice became softer. And their father? Is he around? Mateo frowned. Please. It's okay, Rosa said, touching his arm. Their father left when they were little. He wasn't ready for the responsibility, but that turned out to be a good thing. My girls learned that a woman can be strong and take care of herself. Adela's spoon made a loud sound as she set it down. Are you saying you don't need Mateo? No, Rosa said calmly. I don't need Mateo. I want him. Textile. That's a big difference. I built a life I'm proud of. I'm not here for his money or his fancy life. I'm here because after all these years, we still love each other. Fernando looked at her with new interest. You know, he said, before Mateo went to Harvard, he used to talk about a girl who believed in him and made him want to be better. Was that you? Rosa nodded, surprised. Yes. She helped me study, Mateo said, and even after long days working at her father's church, she always told me I could do anything. Rosa smiled. And look at you now. You did it. Mateo shook his head. No, I did what everyone else wanted me to do. You're the one who really succeeded. You raised two amazing daughters and built a business all by yourself. Adela watched them, her face softening. Tell me about your daughters, she said. As Rosa talked about her girls, the mood in the room changed. Fernando asked about her business. Adela seemed impressed with Valentina's hard work. By the time dessert was served, Adela was showing Rosa pictures of Mateo as a child. Fernando was laughing about the time Mateo tried to run a company for the first time. He was always so serious, Fernando chuckled. Always planning, always working. Rosa smiled. That's true. Until he met you, Adela said. Before Harvard, he smiled more. He was happier. Mateo reached for Rosa's hand under the table. I was happier, he said. And I'm happier now. Adela looked at their hands, then at Fernando. They shared a look like they were remembering something important. Well, Adela finally said, I suppose we'll need 2 more chairs for Christmas dinner. For your daughters, Rosa. That is, if you'll join us. Rosa's eyes filled with happy tears. We'd be honored. In the weeks that followed, Mateo split his time between his office and Rosa's hot dog cart. He wanted to learn her business. His fancy suits were replaced with casual clothes. His perfect hands got dirty from mustard and onions, but he didn't care. He was happy. The newspapers loved the story. Millionaire trades boardroom for hot dogs, one headline read. Another said, Love conquers all. Even people in the business world noticed the change in Mateo. He's different now, one businessman said, more human. He cares about more than just money. Even Mateo's old girlfriend, Valeria, couldn't stop him. She tried to spread rumors about him having a breakdown, but no one believed her. Not when they saw how happy he was with Rosa. But not everything was perfect. One morning, Rosa arrived at work and found her hot dog cart vandalized. The glass was broken, and someone had spray-painted Gold Digger on the side. Mateo was furious. I'll find out who did this. He reached for his phone to call security. No, Rosa said, grabbing her cleaning supplies. This is how I've handled problems for 15 years. I clean up the mess and keep going. So they cleaned together. Mateo's expensive watch got scratched, but he didn't care. When they finished, the cart looked as good as new. You know what this means? Rosa asked. That someone's jealous? Mateo guessed. That people will always talk, Rosa corrected him. They'll always judge. Are you sure you're ready for that? Mateo looked at her, his hands still covered in mustard. I've never been more sure of anything. That night, they had dinner at Rosa's house with her daughters. Valentina was showing them her medical school books when there was a knock at the door. It was Padre Ignacio, Rosa's father. Daddy? Rosa stood up in surprise. Her father almost never visited without calling first. He looked at Mateo. I saw what happened to your cart on the news, he said, and I saw how Mateo helped you clean it. Mateo stood up straight. He remembered how this man had once told him years ago that he wasn't good enough for Rosa. 25 years ago, Padre Ignacio said, I told you that you were too focused on success, that you would break my daughter's heart. Mateo nodded. You were right. Maybe, the Padre said. But maybe I was wrong too. The man I see now is different. He's kind. He makes my daughter happy. Rosa took Mateo's hand. I came to say I'm sorry, her father said. Sometimes God's plans take longer than we think. Rosa had tears in her eyes. Would you stay for dinner, Daddy? Valentina was just telling us about her studies. The Padre smiled. I'd like that. So they all sat down together. The millionaire, the hot dog vendor, the preacher, and two smart daughters. The plates didn't match. The tablecloth was old. But Matteo realized something. No fancy restaurant had ever felt this perfect. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, Matteo and Rosa sat on her front porch swing, just like they did when they were teenagers. Your father's blessing means a lot, Matteo said softly. It does, Rosa agreed. But you know what means more? That you didn't need it. You chose me anyway. Matteo pulled her close. I should have chosen you back then. Rosa shook her head. No, we weren't ready then. You needed to grow, and so did I. Sometimes the longest road is the right one. A car passed by slowly. It was one of Valeria's friends, maybe hoping to hear some gossip, but Rosa and Matteo didn't care. Let them look. Let them talk. I've been thinking, Matteo said after a while, about the future. Rosa tried to keep her voice calm, but her heart beat faster. What about it? What if we make your business bigger, not change it, just grow it? Maybe food trucks or small restaurants, still your recipes, your way, just bigger. Rosa sat up and looked at him. You want to invest in my hot dog business? Only if you want me to, Matteo said quickly. And only as a silent partner. You'll still be the boss. I just see how many people you make happy every day. Maybe more people should get to enjoy that. Rosa had always dreamed of growing her business, but she never had the money. You really want to be the hot dog king of Chicago? She teased. Matteo laughed. I just want to be with you. Partner, investor, even hot dog helper. I don't care what people call me. A year later, Rosa stood in front of her hot dog cart. But today wasn't just any day. The cart was decorated with white flowers and ribbons. A small crowd had gathered. Are you sure about this? Valentina asked, fixing her mother's simple white dress. I've never been more sure, Rosa smiled, looking at the cart that had changed her life twice now. Matteo stood nearby, looking handsome in a suit that wasn't as fancy as his old ones, but somehow he looked happier. His parents were there too. Adela Pedraza wore casual clothes for once, and Fernando Pedraza looked proud of his son. Only you two would get married at a hot dog cart, Isabella laughed, but her eyes were full of happy tears. This is where we found each other again, Matteo had said. This is where I finally got my priorities straight. Where else would we get married? Rosa's regular customers were there, standing beside rich business people. Valeria, the construction worker, talked to Carlos Paredes about the stock market. Tom, the newspaper vendor, shared stories about Rosa with Adela Pedraza. Padre Ignacio stepped forward, ready to perform the wedding. He was the same man who once told Matteo to stay away from Rosa. Now he was marrying them. 25 years ago, the Padre said, these two young people stood at a crossroads. They took different paths, but God, in his wisdom, brought them back together right here at this little hot dog cart. Valeria drove by in her expensive car, slowing down to watch. But this time there was no anger on her face, just a little sadness, like she finally understood what real love looked like. When it was time for the vows, Matteo held Rosa's hands. Rosa, he said, I spent 25 years thinking success meant having the biggest office, the most expensive car, the perfect image. But real success is standing here, on this street corner, making people happy with hot dogs and kind words. You taught me that love isn't about what you have, but who you are. And I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of your love. Rosa wiped away a tear. Matteo, when you came back, I was scared. Scared to trust again. Scared to love again. But you showed me that some loves are worth the risk. You didn't try to change my world. You became part of it. And I promise to spend my life sharing that world with you. By the power given to me, Padre Ignacio said, and by the state of Illinois, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Their first kiss as a married couple was drowned out by cheers and the sound of hot dog bells ringing. All the local vendors had brought their carts to celebrate. The reception was held at the park nearby. Hot dogs were served alongside champagne. Adela Pedraza was seen eating a hot dog with extra mustard. She even smiled when some got on her designer dress. Your mom is enjoying the hot dogs, Rosa whispered to Mateo as they danced. Everyone loves your hot dogs, Mateo grinned. That's why our first restaurant opens next month. Rosa looked around at their wedding. Her daughters danced with Mateo's business partners. Her father talked with Mateo's mother. Two worlds that had once seemed so far apart had come together as one big family. Did you ever think we'd end up here? Rosa asked. That day when I first saw you at the cart? No, Mateo admitted. I thought I'd lost you forever. But you know what? Sometimes life gives you a second chance at your first love. Rosa smiled. Speaking of second chances, I have something to tell you. Mateo looked at her curiously. Valentina did a test for me last week, Rosa said softly. We're going to have a baby. Mateo's eyes filled with tears. Really? But I thought, at our age... God works in mysterious ways, Rosa said, repeating her father's words. Looks like your mom is finally getting the grandchild she's been asking for. Mateo pulled her close. I love you, he whispered. Hot dogs and all. I love you too, Rosa laughed. Fancy suits and all. The sun set over Chicago, covering everything in golden light. Rosa and Mateo danced slowly beside her hot dog cart. The words "just married" were painted where gold digger had once been sprayed. 25 years was a long time to wait for happiness, but as Rosa looked up at Mateo, she knew some loves were worth waiting for. Sometimes the heart knows what it wants, even if it takes time for the mind to figure it out. And sometimes something simple, like a hot dog cart on a busy street, can lead to the greatest love story of all. Ready to go home? Mateo asked as the party wound down. Rosa looked at their family, at her cart, at the life they had built together. I am home, she said. And she was right. Home wasn't a fancy house or a mansion. Home was wherever they were together, whether serving hot dogs on a street corner or dancing at their wedding. Love had brought them back to each other. Because sometimes love comes back even stronger than before. Sometimes what looks like an ending is really just a new beginning. And sometimes, just sometimes, hot dogs and champagne make the perfect pair. Thanks for watching. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Check out our other videos too. See you in the next one.